He was a short, slender man with bow legs and a hook nose, and his name was Adolf Eichmann. Having joined the Nazi Party, he was considered to be a counselor in the civilian world. He was also seen to be socially awkward and sluggish, and he had little to redeem himself for. On the other hand, he was able to carve out a career that would see him go down in history as one of the most heinous mass murderers in the history of humanity because of his unwavering dedication to commands and his need for merciless efficiency. On March 19, 1906, Adolf Eichmann was born in Zelig, Germany. His parents, Adolf Eichmann, a bookkeeper, and Maria, his wife, were the parents of 5 children. Adolf Eichmann was the oldest of the brothers. As a child, Adolf was a timid and anxious individual who had very few friends. The remainder of the family relocated to Linz when he was 7 years old so that his father could begin working as a commercial manager for the city's electrical supplier. He was also accompanied by the rest of the family. After a year had passed, Adolf went to Linz to attend the Franz Joseph Secondary School, which was the same school that Adolf Hitler had attended in the 1890s to complete his secondary education. Despite his lack of social skills, he continues to be a child who is withdrawn and lonely, and his parents are concerned about this. Because of his dark complexion and unique nose, his classmates tease him by calling him Decline Judah or the Little J. This is because of his physical characteristics. I do not demonstrate that I am a student who is, at best, mediocre. When he was a teenager, he had a reputation for being difficult and moody. His father had written him off as a hopeless case with little possibility of pursuing his studies. He had a reputation for being difficult and gloomy. When he was 15 years old, he dropped out of school and started training to become a mechanic. This was another area in which he was unsuccessful. After a period of 2 years that were filled with frustration, he decided to give up on this professional path and work as a sales representative for a mining firm. Following the completion of this position, which lasted for a period of 2 years, he went on to become a district agent for an oil firm. Eichmann was a morose, reclusive, and socially incompetent small man by the time he was 25 years old. He might still be confused for a Jew when he was in his younger years. In the year 1932, he was employed in Salzburg, Upper Austria, and had a position that was secure but uninspiring. He worked in the region. The National Socialist Party is the organization that he joins, despite the fact that he has never exhibited any interest in political affairs. His involvement with the party was initiated by a buddy named Ernst Kaltenbrunner, who was a party official for Eichmann. This acquaintance was the one who encouraged him to join the party. Through his participation in the party, he would have the chance to become a member of a group and to advance his position in life. More than anything else, he desired to be somebody and to demonstrate to the world that he was valuable as a human. He wanted to be somebody. In November of 1932, he was welcomed into the ranks of the SS, and his duties included serving as a member of the protection squad for speakers at party rallies, in addition to providing security for the party headquarters in Linz. Additionally, he continued to be employed by the oil firm at this time. Eichmann was fired from his position as a result of staff reductions in January 1933, just a few weeks after Hitler assumes the position of Chancellor of Germany. His application for active SS duty in Germany was submitted without delay. This was accepted, and he demonstrated that he was a conscientious follower of commands, which led to his promotion to the position of chauffeur in a matter of months. During the month of November in 1933, he was given a position on the administrative staff of the Dutch concentration camp, which was a leading channel. One of Eichmann's responsibilities was to maintain a comprehensive inventory of all the objects that were being taken away from Jewish detainees who were being brought in. Despite the fact that he was good at his job, he found it to be extremely annoying. It was around this time that Hitler started to consciously focus his attention on learning and instilling the fundamental concepts of Nazi ideology. If they had told me that my own father was a traitor and I had to kill him, I would have done it in an attempt to break out of his monotonous routine, He stated, summing up what he had come to believe, he was referring to the fact that he had decided to kill his own father. In 1934, Eichmann submitted his application to become a member of the SD, which became the security department of the SS. It was determined that his application was successful, and he was promptly transported to the headquarters of the Nazi Party in Berlin. In a short amount of time, he was elevated to the position of Hauptführer. During this time, Eichmann was tasked with conducting investigations and composing reports regarding the activities of Jewish organizations in Germany. After devoting himself to the task at hand, he became proficient in the fundamentals of the Hebrew language and established himself as the Nazi Party's foremost authority on the history and culture of the Jewish people. By this time, the perpetually reserved Eichmann had the opportunity to meet and fall in love with Veronika Lebel, who had undergone the necessary screening to confirm that she did not have any Jewish ancestry. On March 21, 1935, the pair tied the knot and became partners. Later on, they would have 4 sons of their own. Eichmann, who at the time held the rank of SS, which is equivalent to our second lieutenant, was dispatched to the British Mandate of Palestine in 1937, along with his superior officer, for a vital task as part of the British occupation of Palestine. The reason he was there was to study whether or not it would be possible to force German Jews to go to Palestine via forced migration. As a result of the British government's decision to annex Austria, the mission was never able to become operational since the British refused to allow them admission into the country. To transfer to Vienna with the responsibility of organizing the local SS that is efficient in doing so, and in another promotion, this time to the rank of S's, over to him for the first lieutenants, is not something that I'm able to do. In addition to this, he was chosen to establish the Central Office for Jewish Immigration, the only mission of which was to compel the evacuation of all Jews from Austria. It was with an unprecedented amount of fervor that Eichmann plunged himself into his new post. Over the course of 8 months, Hitler had deprived the vast majority of Jews living in the country of all of their farms and belongings, and he had also compelled 45,000 Jews to flee the country. Unbelievably, an additional 150,000 simply vanished without a trace. His effectiveness, despite the fact that it has left his superiors very impressed. Specifically, the invasion of Poland on September 1, 1939, and the ensuing outbreak of war that followed. A shift occurred in Hitler's approach to the Jewish people. There would no longer be any encouragement for them to leave Germany, as at this moment they would be deported against their will. It was planned that Jews would be gathered together and then transported to concentration camps that were located in newly acquired regions of the Reich. In October of 1939, Eichmann was sent to Berlin, where he worked directly under Heinrich Müller, the head of the Gestapo, in the process of establishing the Central Office for Jewish Immigration over the entire country. As his first assignment, he was tasked with removing Jews from certain regions of Poland. While this was going on, he continued working on his pet project, which was to rid his home city of Vienna of the Jewish problem. He chose Nisko, which is located in the extreme north of Poland, as the location for a transit camp. This camp would be used to assemble the Jews who had been evicted from Poland before transferring them to the cold wilderness of Russia to fend for themselves amidst the severe conditions. While this was going on, ethnic Jews were being relocated to the regions of Poland from which they had been expelled. A further promotion was bestowed to Eichmann on the 19th of December in the year 1939. During this time, he assumed the role of the overall coordinator of Jewish affairs and evacuation for the entire Third Reich. Additionally, thousands of Jews were being relocated to a region in the eastern part of Poland that was known as the General Government. This was happening at the same time that Hitler was exercising ultimate control over all deportations to camps in Poland. Immediately, Eichmann devised plans to move 600,000 Jews into the General Government. However, these preparations were delayed due to concerns from authorities in the East who were concerned that an excessive number of Jews would destroy the economy. As a result, around 63,000 people were transported to the region, and a significant number of them perished while they were in transit throughout occupied Europe. During the time that they were waiting to be expelled, Jews were jammed into ghettos. Due to the deplorable conditions that prevailed in the ghettos, a great number of individuals lost their lives before they were ever able to board a train carriage. In the year 1940, Eichmann presented a plan that aimed to relocate 1 million people to Madagascar on an annual basis. His strategy had been predicated on the belief that the Luftwaffe would be successful in capturing the British during the Battle of Britain. This would have allowed the Germans to gain control of the skies above the Atlantic. Following the failure of this endeavor, the preparations for Operation Madagascar were put on hold indefinitely from that point forward. During the month of September in the year 1941, Eichmann was summoned to a conference with Reinhard Heydrich, who took charge of the SD. Within the context of this discussion, he was informed that the Führer had issued an order mandating the execution of all Jews living in nations that were seized by Germany. After the Soviet Union was conquered, this was supposed to go into effect according to the time frame that was established. Having said that, a reevaluation of this perspective was necessitated by the United States' involvement in the war, which occurred when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. In order to achieve the highest possible level of success, the Jews were to be eradicated. On the outskirts of Berlin in 1942, Heydrich convened a gathering of the most influential members of the Nazi group known as Wannsee. It was during the course of this meeting. This resulted in the establishment of an explicit policy of Jewish annihilation. When it came to the Jewish question, Heydrich referred to it as the ultimate solution. In order to get ready for this meeting, Eichmann had compiled statistics of the number of Jews in each country who were required to be exterminators. Heydrich nominated him to the position of his right-hand man, a position that charged him with the responsibility of arranging all of the trains that would be used to transport Jews to death camps in Poland. Eichmann was accountable for the death camps at Auschwitz because of the steady supply of human feed that he had access to from the concentration camp. The process by which Treblinka and Buchenwald evolved into killing machines that operated around the clock. According to Eichmann, Jews and Gypsies from Austria, Holland, France, the Baltic states, and Yugoslavia were sent to the concentration camp where they were murdered. In many cases, they were initially relocated to Warsaw and other ghettos in Poland before being relocated to locations further east. Eichmann had written the following about his work Jewry, which is an excellent illustration of how perception may be twisted. It was thankful that they provided it with the opportunity to gain insight into ways of life in the ghetto community. This would be a fantastic school for Israel's future students to attend. In general, the majority of Jews are content and content with their lives in the ghetto. Over the course of a month, Eichmann was subjected to an increasing number of demands to quickly speed up the killing machine. He was in charge of delivering victims to a total of 164 camps, were dispersed around Eastern Europe, and was also responsible for making efforts to improve the efficiency of the operation. He was in charge of supervising the expansions of the death trains. However, he did not give any consideration to the individuals who were jammed into the carriages for weeks on end with food or drink, and as a result, a significant number of people perished while they were traveling. In addition, Eichmann's organizational skills were utilized in order to enhance the effectiveness of the processes involved in the actual killing. The enormous rooms that are devoid of windows are designed by him, and he suggests that they be disguised as shower units in order to alleviate feelings of terror. In addition to this, he advocated for the substitution of the rather ineffective carbon monoxide gas with the pesticide Zyklon B, which was based on cyanide. An incident that took place in 1942 in Paris during the roundup of Jews provides us with an example of Eichmann's brutal efficiency. People were rounded up in the number of 7,000, with 4,051 of them being youngsters. In spite of this, the city authorities voiced their opposition to the deportation and were successful in negotiating with Eichmann. For a period of 6 days, the Jews were confined inside a warehouse without access to either food or water. As Eichmann glared down the French officials, he insisted that each and every Jew had to be taken to the east to be executed. In the year 1944, Eichmann was moved to Hungary, which had only recently been conquered by the Nazis. He had the responsibility of ensuring that Hungarian Jews were transported to concentration camps as quickly as possible, and he carried out this mission with a merciless efficiency. More than 400,000 of them were found guilty by him in a span of only a few short months. Many members of the Nazi hierarchy realized by the beginning of 1945 that the game was over. The Russians were approaching them from one side, and the Allies were closing in from the other. This was a clear indication that the game was over. The survival of the individual became the top objective for many. Reinhard Heydrich came to the conclusion that it was time to put a halt to the systematic slaughter of Jews, and he immediately began the process of deleting any evidence of the crimes against humanity that had been authorized. Upon hearing this, he was not pleased with the situation. Because of his own free will, he made the decision to carry on with the killings and even to hurry them up. However, at long last, even he was able to see the writing on the wall. The thing that appeared to worry him the most was the possibility that he would be dispatched to the front lines to battle either the Russians or the Americans. In March, as the Russians were pouring into Hungary, he fled to Austria, where he attempted to convince his longtime friend Ernst Kaltenbrunner to assist him in evading capture by the Allies. Eichmann, on the other hand, was a dangerous person to interact with due to the fact that he had been intimately involved in the systematic massacre of Jewish people. In addition, Kaltenbrunner, who was attempting to protect his own skin, did not want to have any interaction with him. Almost immediately after that, Eichmann was taken into custody by the United States Army, who had given him a phony name. He was moved about between numerous different prisoner of war camps. He had been working in Cham, Germany, as part of a work detail when he managed to escape. In order to conceal his true identity, he obtained new identification documents and assumed the name Otto Henning. His new home is at Lunenburg Heath, which is located in Lower Saxony. After that, he started working in the forestry industry. In their efforts to dodge prosecution, other members of the Nazi hierarchy did not fare as well as Eichmann did due to adverse circumstances. A significant number of them finally made their way to the Nuremberg war tribunals, where they provided in-depth testimony regarding the part that argument had played in the systematic planning and execution of the Holocaust against the Jewish people. As a consequence of this, he became one of the Nazi war criminals who was sought after the most. Almedal, a Roman Catholic bishop, who was a Nazi sympathizer and had already assisted a large number of Nazis in escaping Europe, provided Eichmann with support when he moved to Italy in the year 1950. His assistance was provided by Almedal. Eichmann was able to secure a humanitarian passport from the International Committee of the Red Cross with the assistance of Herdal. Additionally, Herdal provided him with forged identification and airport permits for Argentina. With the use of these documents, he was able to obtain a passport from the Red Cross that allowed him to travel internationally. Everything he required to set ship for South America was now in his possession. In the year 1950, he left Genoa on the 17th of June and arrived in Buenos Aires on the 14th of July to begin his journey. Eichmann worked for a government contractor in Tucumán province for the subsequent 2 years, during which time he used the name Ricardo Clemens. When he had been there for 2 years, he finally felt safe enough to bring his wife and sons with him. They made the trip to Buenos Aires, where Eichmann worked a variety of low-paying jobs before finally landing a job at Mercedes-Benz. Over the course of the subsequent several years, he would make use of his innate organizing abilities in order to ascend to the post of department head beginning in the year 1956. At Eichmann's residence, a neo-Nazi fanatic started conducting interviews with him with the intention of writing a fawning book about him. In the course of working on this project, a substantial and incriminating collection of tapes, transcripts, and notes was acquired. While everything was going on, a small group of resolute Nazi hunters were making their way straight toward Eichmann. A prominent figure among them was Simon Wiesenthal, who had previously served time in a concentration camp. Wiesenthal discovered a postcard in 1953 that contained a statement from a former victim of the Nazi regime who claimed to have seen the pig Eichmann in Buenos Aires. In Vienna, he communicated this information to the Israeli consulates that were located there. Additionally, the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States was aware that Eichmann was somewhere in South America. On the other hand, they declined to take action based on the knowledge because they were afraid of embarrassing themselves. Over the course of the years following World War II, the United States of America has utilized a number of Nazis to work on the Manhattan atomic bomb project. They did not want to get involved in anything that could have resulted in the material being made available to the general public. While this was going on, Wiesenthal was collaborating with Mossad, the Israeli intelligence service, to construct a picture of Eichmann's life in Argentina. It was after Eichmann's second oldest son became involved with the daughter of a Holocaust survivor who had relocated to Argentina that the investigation began to take a turn for the better. The youngster started bragging about his father's involvement in the eventual solution to the Jewish crisis, claiming that his father had worked for Hitler and was, in fact, the brains behind the solution. As soon as the daughter became aware of this knowledge, she immediately informed her father, who then informed the Israeli authorities. According to Mossad, an operator was dispatched to Buenos Aires in order to verify Eichmann's identity and location. It was now up to the Israeli Prime Minister, David Ben-Gurion, to determine whether to proceed diplomatically or to simply seize Eichmann and bring him back to Israel to face the consequences of his actions. In light of the fact that Argentina had a history of refusing extradition requests involving former Nazis, Ben-Gurion made the decision to bring Eichmann to Argentina by the use of force. For the purpose of carrying out the mission, a Mossad team consisting of 8 individuals was dispatched to Argentina. On May 11, 1960, the operation was conducted out while Eichmann was walking home from work to agents who were pretending to be working on a car as he walked past them. A cigarette was requested by a third agent who approached him and asked for it. When Eichmann looked at the man with a frightened expression on his face, all 3 agents immediately rushed towards him. The punch to his neck that was given by one of them, who had a black belt in karate, caused him to lose consciousness almost immediately. After being put into a car and transported to a secure location, Eichmann was stripped naked and examined under his right armpits prior to being taken into custody. On the 21st of May, the agents discovered a statue that had been partially removed, which offered further evidence that he was a member of the SS. A commercial flight that was headed for Israel was used to smuggle Eichmann out of Argentina while he was under a significant amount of sedation. Ben-Gurion, the Prime Minister of Israel, made the announcement that the Nazi who was the most wanted in the world had been captured. It was a phenomenon that was felt all across the world. The Argentinian voiced a vehement objection to the manner in which the kidnapping occurred, asserting that it was a breach of the sovereignty of Argentina. In his response, Ben-Gurion stated that Eichmann had been taken into custody, not by representatives of the Israeli government, but rather by private civilians. On the 11th of April in 1961, the proceedings of the trial of Eichmann began in the Beth Han, House of the People, located in Israel. A number of charges, including those involving crimes against humanity, were brought against him. The allegations included the notion that he was the individual who was directly in charge of the entire Nazi bureaucratic machinery, which was responsible for the murder of millions of people both before and during the war. The proceedings of Eichmann's trial were shown live on television stations all over the world. After hearing the heartfelt testimonies of Holocaust survivors and other individuals, Eichmann did not make any attempt to claim that the facts were not true. His only defense was that he was merely carrying out orders that were given to him. According to him, he never performed anything, no matter how big or how tiny, without first having specific instructions from Adolf Hitler or any of my superiors. The trial lasted for 14 weeks, and by the time it was over, Eichmann had been found guilty on all charges. A sentence of execution by hanging was handed down. The new Israeli Prime Minister rejected the clemency request that was submitted by his defense team, which resulted in the appeal being made unsuccessfully. Israel's Ramla jail was the location where the execution took place on June 1, 1962. The black coat that was offered to Eichmann while he was hanging on the gallows was rejected by him. Long live Germany. Enjoy your life, Austria. Peru, may you live forever. These other nations with which I have had the most extensive association, moreover, I will not forget about them. I was required to abide by the provisions of my war and my flag. I am prepared. The body of Eichmann was incinerated, and his ashes were dispersed throughout international waterways in the Mediterranean Sea and other regions.